We have some comments. We will start with Anna. Please, you can start. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it is working, yeah.
Yes, yes. But please. This. Down, down. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm the director of the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism in Washington, D.C. You heard a little bit about our center from Dr. Ardian yesterday. And everything we do you can find on the website, you can find on our YouTube channel. And over the years, I'm a psychologist. I've interviewed around 600 terrorists. In 2006 and 2007, I worked in Iraq, and I designed the detainee rehabilitation program, which was for 20,000 detainees, 800 juveniles. And we put them through a treatment program. In the recent years, myself and my colleague, Dr. Ardian, have interviewed 169. You can't hear me?
Of course we can. We can.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what she's saying. Have interviewed 169 ISIS defectors, returnees, and prisoners. And from these, we've created short video clips. We interview them on video. And we've created short video clips that we put on the internet to fight ISIS's online recruitment. We put them in 27 different languages. Kurdish and Arabic are some of the languages, and of course English. You can see them on our YouTube channel. So now I'd like to turn my attention to the situation here and the purpose of this conference, why we've been gathered here. There's 1,200 foreign fighters, many of them Europeans, alongside 12,000 foreign wives and children of ISIS, with another 50 to 60,000 Iraqis and Syrians displaced, all in ISIS camps across northern Syria, held in SDF custody.
Sorry, Doctor.
1 minute.
سوري. رجاء فقط الهدوء، الأصوات من الخلف بدها توصل لهنا عندنا إذا ممكن.
So what to do with these prisoners is a serious issue facing both the SDF and the nations from where these prisoners come. There's various answers that are being put out. One answer is to transfer them to Iraq, where Western justice is not being carried out. As our previous speaker from Iran told us, that's a mistake. Another answer is to create an international tribunal. I'm a psychologist. You called the doctor to come and speak to you, and I'm going to tell you the truth. It's not a viable option. You might not like hearing that, but it's not viable. And the third option is to offer serious and real support to the SDF to begin evidence gathering, psychosocial, and ideological rehabilitation processes. And through these processes, to make it more politically viable for home countries to take back their ISIS prisoners, to prosecute them, and in hopefully many cases, rehabilitate them. So what to do with ISIS prisoners has a lot to do with the future of the SDF and Rojava. I understand you would like to transition to be internationally and internally recognized as a semi-independent state within a federal system of Syria, and you deserve that. You fought bravely and defeated ISIS militarily on the ground. You deserve to be recognized. But when it comes to these detainees, there are three basic choices. The first is keep arresting them, keep detaining them without charges and without clear legal jurisdiction, and then try to send them to their home countries, many which are currently refusing to take them. This is a frustrating exercise, and it leads to increased numbers of detainees. We saw a jump from, I think it was 1,500 to 1,200 in the last month. Hello, sir. And we saw the same thing before in Iraq when we got a burgeoning of detainees, 20,000 detainees in Camp Bucca. And we know that some of those prisoners successfully plotted in Camp Bucca, and some of them were later released without prosecution, and some of them ultimately became key figures in what we now know as ISIS. We cannot let this happen again. The current US policy is at present is to pressure countries to take their foreign fighters home and to take the wives and children home. And some countries have complied. Russia, Kazakhstan, Kosovo are examples of countries that have taken fairly large numbers home, and they're processing them and sorting through who can be prosecuted, who should be prosecuted, and who can be released and rehabilitated back into society. The US military has assisted on transfers to some countries, but there's other countries, and we heard today from one of the lawyers from Holland, there's other countries that are frustrated where they're trying to bring the women and children back, Albania, Holland, but they're trying to work and don't have recognized relationships with the SDF between their countries, and they don't have a mechanism to bring them home. The US and others need to be much more proactive in supporting this process. When the detainees flew home to Kosovo, I believe they were flown on a military plane. They didn't go through Erbil, they went directly. And that can be facilitated with any country that works with the US, and it should be. However, we still have many countries refusing to recognize Rojava, refusing to deal with the SDF, and refusing any political recognition whatsoever, which makes it difficult to repatriate their detainees. And they also fear these detainees. So we're at an impasse on that option. This brings us to the second choice, which France recently engaged. That was to send them to Iraq, where confessions, not evidence, form the basis of convictions. And these confessions often lead to life imprisonment or death sentences. So there was a great deal of criticism about sending these, I believe it was 8 Frenchmen, one of them who complained that he had been tortured and that his confession was not voluntary and that he didn't understand what was happening in court. We too have talked to Iraqi detainees from France, for example, who said they got life sentences. A woman told us she got a life sentence. She didn't understand a word of what was said in court. She didn't have a lawyer to defend her. And this is a system that doesn't operate by Western and EU legal standards. And the transfer of citizens from SDF custody into Iraq for prosecution, it's neither ethical or a legal option, despite that the French just did it. So the third option is what the SDF is calling for, an international tribunal to try ISIS prisoners on SDF soil. But I just went and talked to the UNCTAD about this. I talked to David Sharia and David Wells, and they said there's 2 international entities that exist for setting up international courts, the UN and the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Both of these entities clearly respect the sovereignty of existing countries, including Syria. Whether we like it or not, we have to acknowledge we are sitting in Syria right now. Also in Rojava, but we are in Syria. And according to these CTED experts' views, the problem with international tribunals are that they're extremely costly, they're not productive. They gave examples of the ones that ran in the Balkans, Rwanda, Lebanon. They said they had huge costs, and they were not particularly successful in terms of convictions. They also are hard to shut down. So those are the budgetary challenges. But they also said the ICC doesn't have the money to set up an international tribunal, and that the UN will not establish one in Syria because they would have to deal with Assad. So the UN, think about it. Are you going to go against current US policy? Is Russia going to vote for it? Is China going to vote for it? This would surely be vetoed by Security Council members. And they also told me that setting up a court requires internationally recognized jurisdiction. And the SDF, much as we love them, and we do love you, is a non-state armed actor, and they don't have international recognition. So we have to acknowledge that a court like this would be subject to Syrian jurisdiction, and the UN is bound to respect that. So the court here would require cooperating with Assad's government, which is clearly not a politically viable option. In this conference, there's been a great deal of blaming of Turkey, but the truth is that there's many countries to blame for the rise of ISIS. We can blame the US coalition of Iraq and the failure to set up a very good functioning country. When we sent all the Iraqi army, the Ba'athist, the intel home, they were disgruntled, and we later saw them rise back up as Al-Qaeda in Iraq and later ISIS. We also saw Obama draw a red line against Assad and then do nothing. We saw Obama saying, I can't find a partner in Syria. We saw European countries and the US arm the Free Syrian Army, and then the Free Syrian Army sold, gave, and turned over their weapons to ISIS. So our guns got into the hands of killers. We also saw European and Middle Eastern countries flushing the toilet, saying, all our jihadis go to Syria. Great, good riddance, don't come back, we hope you get killed. Never mind what you do there. And now you're stuck with these people. So there's many people to blame. And while we certainly should also blame Turkey, one thing that we have failed to name in this conference is the most heinous of culprits, which is Assad. His forces raped more women, killed more innocents, and carried out far more atrocities than ISIS did. So their government officials are not about to put up an international tribunal, which would also try them for their crimes. It's just not going to happen. So if an international court is going to be established in the region, it will be established in Iraq, where there is a functioning government, whether we like their legal system or not. But the Iraqi government isn't interested in an international tribunal. They're happy with their own court system, and they don't feel a need for international oversight. And if it were to happen, it would be a hybrid court, and it would be established in Iraq. So we would again have all the legal and ethical dilemmas involved. I should mention that there is already a UN International Independent and Impartial Mechanism, the IIIM. It's already operating in Syria and Iraq. I've talked to them. Their job is to gather evidence and prepare for trials back home. Yet they face many of the same challenges as an international tribunal, and they've also shown themselves to be highly bureaucratic and slow. So this is what we can expect from the international community. So the last and the really only viable choice for the SDF is to begin steps that do not require international recognition nor jurisdiction. They're free, and they should begin immediately a systematic process of prisoner assessment, evidence gathering, psychosocial treatment of the prisoners in their custody. And this is a change that's positive, a choice that's positive, and it builds upon the strengths of the SDF. We should all be so proud of the SDF. Look, they managed to raise an army that successfully fought ISIS. They liberated territory, and they also succeeded in establishing a functioning, okay. They also succeeded, okay, go slower?
I'm very busy.
You will limit my time and
Yes,
then tell me to go
yes,
slow.
please.
Okay, the SDF managed to pull a military together, even though they never had one in the past, and they managed to establish a functioning grassroots democracy in the heart of the Middle East, where that is a rarity. That's a beacon of hope in the region. And in my opinion, the SDF needs to play to both of these strengths. They need to manage a positive security environment, which you've been doing, continue with good governance, and avoid the issues of serious security violations, corruption, cronyism, and the rest of it that's so pervasive in the region. These are issues which gave rise to ISIS in the first place. I'd like to say from the 80+ ISIS prisoners that we've in-depth interviewed in SDF custody, many have spontaneously told us, we're well treated in prison. The SDF doesn't engage in torture. We haven't been hurt. We're not afraid of the death penalty here. So even though ISIS murdered and raped here on this territory, the SDF operates with restraint, with ethics, with values. They don't revenge in kind. They don't endorse the death penalty. They don't routinely engage in extrajudicial killings, and instead they operate with Western values and ethics. Bravo. And you should continue that, and you should play to your strengths. We know that the foreign fighter prisoners and the ISIS wives who came here followed a narrative. They followed the ISIS narrative. And in the face of serious security violations, political failings in both Syria and Iraq, as well as failings in Europe for the second-generation Muslims of immigrant descent, ISIS was selling a dream. It was a dream of a utopian Islamic state. They said that they would deliver justice, prosperity, and they had a lot of money, like Nico told us, and that they would rule by Islamic ideals. Instead, they delivered death, destruction, rape, were corrupt, and un-Islamic. Now, in our experience interviewing nearly 200 ISIS cadres, both in Iraq and Syria and elsewhere, we find that the former ISIS cadres are spontaneously de-radicalizing. They see ISIS for what it is. They lived under it. They begin to hate it, and they want out. But they need something better. They need something true to believe in. And the SDF can deliver that. You've created a real grassroots democracy here. You hold your prisoners in prisons with respect. You operate by European standards. You're feminist. You're inclusive of other religions and ethnicities. And this is a hugely powerful message to the imprisoned ISIS cadres. They've just experienced the complete opposite. They've lived under pervasive injustice and tyranny, living and serving ISIS. They see something else. So we recommend that the SDF begin working immediately with the detainees, formally assessing them, sorting through who can be treated, where are they on the terrorist trajectory, what do they ideologically still believe or ever believed, what are their psychosocial issues, how can we begin to rehabilitate them starting today. Don't wait for an international tribunal. Don't wait for them to be judged guilty, not guilty. Just start. And we know from our own interviews that this is a process that can be done. We see for ourselves where people are on the terrorist trajectory from an interview of an hour and a half. We see who's beginning to de-radicalize. We also know the intelligence services are beginning to piece the puzzle together of who knows the crime that the other one did. So you can begin to systematically identify the evidence. Who can testify against who else? What can be presented to the courts so that they really truly can be prosecuted? What evidence exists? Who's willing to confess of their own crimes? And what we find that many ISIS cadres can and will testify against each other, and many are ready to confess to at least some of their crimes. So they can be prosecuted, they can be sent home. Likewise, their victims can testify against them. No one's tapped into the Yazidis yet. The Yazidis are so eager to tell their stories of what happened to them. And they can identify the people that raped them. They can tell the crimes that were done, the things that they witnessed. They lived in the homes of these sick ISIS cadres, and they can testify against them. So we need someone to gather all this evidence and hand it to the Europeans and say, here, look, these 5 guys, you can prosecute them right now. You've got everything you need. It's true that some ISIS cadres are unredeemable monsters. They were rapists, murderers, and sadists, and they need to be punished. But many are now ready to confess, and many are ready to cooperate in being returned home, prosecuted at home. The SDF is known for their bravery, for being a wonderful international partner to Western nations in defeating ISIS. Now they can be a powerful partner in fighting against ISIS on a psychosocial and an ideological level. So we need to start with assessment, evidence gathering, psychosocial counseling, ideological challenge, if it's needed, and cooperation towards prosecution. This requires that we immediately provide funding and technical expertise and support for prison treatment programs. We should begin this without delay. And these are things that we're able to do, that don't require international consensus, that can't be vetoed by Assad, vetoed by Russia, vetoed by China. We can do this. I helped build the detainee rehabilitation program in Iraq in 2006 and 2007. We treated 20,000 detainees. We can do the same here. And I'm also confident that the SDF political leaders and those holding the detainees will be positive partners in this regard. We'll see success in upholding democratic standards and moving towards Western standards of justice. In doing so, we'll also avoid repeating grievances, just half a second, which will only contribute to giving rise to the continuation of violent extremism globally and in the region, including the rising up of the son of ISIS. We don't want to give these people an opportunity to claim grievances, to want to revenge for continued security violations and injustices towards Muslims. At one time, they believed joining ISIS was a good idea, and we need to kill that. So, in ending my talk, I would just like to show you one of our counter-narrative videos. It's from an ISIS guy that we talked to in Iraq, and the whole idea is to have an ISIS insider denounce the group. And we've had such a wonderful partnership with the SDF and doing the same here. And we're very proud of that. And I decided to show you an Iraqi because I think his story is very compelling. But we've got plenty of them that we've interviewed here as well. Thank you.